Hi guys, it's Hella, final part of our Halloween series, and we're in Cornwall. Nowadays it's part of main England, not just GB, but England. It didn't used to be. In fact, it was the only Celtic people in what is actually England. The rest were the Utes, the Angles and the Saxons. The rest of the Celtic people were in the surrounding countries and islands. And it's often completely overlooked as being a completely different country. And actually, locals are getting quite antsy and wanting to break away and become their own country again, similar to Wales. And I think what really started that wholesale was when it was only a few years ago, really, they realised that they were only down to 2 Cornish speakers in the entire county. And I think that was a bit of shell shock to them. And now it's taught in schools. So Cornish people now speak Cornish, thanks to those 2 remaining people. Not even sure if they're still alive, but Cornish lives on thanks to those 2 people. And I remember when they found that out, it was on the TV, like headline news. We'd almost lost the language. It was just nuts, absolutely nuts. So, yes, in Cornish, Halloween is called, I'm going to kill it, Kalan Gwav. And as you may be able to tell, that is very close to the Welsh with their Kalan Gwav, right? That is because Welsh and Breton together help to make up it. Well, if you got a drunk Welsh person and a drunk Breton together and you got them talking over the top of each other, it'd sound like Cornish, because that's sort of how their language happened, right? I'm not even kidding. That is sort of how their language happened. Welsh and Breton had a baby and it was called Cornish, right? Cornish traditions include leaving food out for piskies, to keep them friendly, setting extra places so the dead can come back and spend time at home, and lighting remembrance candles. Now, this is what I mean about them having strong ties to France. The remembrance candles for Halloween thing goes that far into Europe. It can be found in Poland. Church bells are rung to soothe the souls in purgatory. I've not seen that anywhere else, which is why I'm making a big deal of it. Glossy red apples are exchanged as good luck tokens. Children believe going to bed without an apple under their pillow was bad luck, and older girls believe those same apples would help them dream of their future husbands. There's a lot of trying to find your soulmate. Other divination games include throwing walnuts into fires to see how faithful partners will be, and pouring molten lead into water to see what future occupation of husbands would be. I actually think these sound quite fun. Dangerous, but fun. I'd love to know how the walnut thing happens, whether it crackles, pops, bursts into flames, and what they all mean. Another Cornish game was to nail, I love the sound of this one, 2 pieces of wood together in a cross, hang it from the ceiling, place 4 lit candles on it, then suspend apples from it. Members of the household would then try and catch the apples with their mouths, similar to apple bobbing, chance in getting hot wax in the face if they were too slow or too clumsy. That is totally safe. Suddenly I want a chance getting drowned, apple bobbing. No, seriously. The thought of getting hot wax in your eye or your nose. But I know, to tell you the truth, I have seen old, I've been to Cornwall a few times on holiday, and I have seen very old, like, crosses with candles on hanging up from the ceiling. And you can see where there's like notches in, where like string has been hung from them, or maybe chains or something. And it must have been to put the apples on, and they've left them hanging from the ceiling just as like light fixtures. It's awesome to see. And you're just sitting there now thinking about it now, going, how long have they been up there? Because they did look pretty old. How long have they actually been up there? It's just awesome. I actually want to make one because it's that awesome. Not use it, but make one. Carved turnips made it to Cornwall by the 19th century. So that shows you how modern some of these traditions actually are to other areas. So moots are a historic part of Man and a recent part of Cornwall. And this is what I mean. England doesn't actually have that much of a history with Halloween. Certain areas actually have about 150 to 300-year-old history. 300 years in the south or by the Welsh borders. Not that much by the Scottish borders that I can see. I was expecting more. Certain areas in Northumberland, around Berwick, that used to be Scottish, there was a history of it, but that used to be Scottish. But Northumberland and Cumbria, I was expecting more of a history. Some of the towns close to Wales, there was a bit of history. But Devon and areas like that, there was actually Sussex and places, south coast counties, but not London or the surrounding areas to London. They could actually manage about a 300-year-old history for Halloween because it was so strong in the Cornish history that it had travelled out over time, probably with trade and people moving for work. They'd taken it with them. But not in other areas. It had only been the past century. Well, I'm now in 2021, so probably the past 150 years that it really become a thing in the rest of England. Down in the south, there was guising and stuff like that, and different types of guising. I'm going to explain Cornish guising in a second, but England was just devoid until like 150 years ago. And then suddenly it became fashionable. And I think I have an idea why. Right, I'll go into guising. Guising was often performed, a medieval custom where folk travelled door to door in fancy dress, asking for soul cakes in return for praying for the dead. So that's what Cornwall's got. With Cornwall, it wasn't really a big deal. Cornwall was a port, and still is, technically. Doesn't really have that many open ports anymore, but it was a port and fishing, and in fairness, what do you call it, where thieves go, like a pirate area for centuries. So people from Wales, Man, Ireland, Scotland, because the Scottish would stop there on their way over to France, Brittany and other areas would all stop there. Some would make lives there. Others would just stop there for trade, just make a quick layover, things like that. But they bring their customs with them. And I think that's how Cornwall got it so strong. They are Celts, so they would have had it as a harvest festival at the least, but it wasn't their New Year's. I don't think they really had it that strong as a ancestral festival, but they did have it. Then I think it got stronger over time. More got added to it as more people passed by and left their customs behind. And I actually quite like that. So it wasn't that strong in Cornwall, but it did happen and it grew over time. And it seemed to spread out more from Cornwall than any other area. And I think that is because Cornwall, it had mines, it had shipping, it had fishing, it had mills, it had a lot of people who travelled there for work, and then a lot of people who travelled out of there for work. So it had quite a transient population from the surrounding counties and to the surrounding counties. And that, I think, is how the surrounding counties actually have quite a long and pre-industrial history of Halloween. But about 150 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution start, didn't we? So people started going to big cities and moving out of the country and out of the more farm countries such as Scotland and Cornwall and Wales into the more industrialised areas like Sheffield and Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool and Sunderland and Newcastle and of course London and Birmingham, places like that, big cities from these far-flung places. And I think that's how come Halloween finally made it to England. And I have only just twigged with the timeline how that happened. Poof. I do have a working brain. Do you know what? I've been working on this for days and I hadn't twigged until just now. Yeah. But yes, so England, I'm sorry, you don't have a Halloween. Cornwall, though, you do have a Halloween. But you're not really as English as the English think you are. And I don't blame you for pointing that out at every given chance. Man, you win. Ireland, you also win. And England, you lose. Sorry, mate. Scotland, you second lose, but not total lose. And Cornwall, well done for like taking it all on and even taking on European customs as well as your closer neighbours. I know that you were very close with the Breton people, but then again the English were very close with the Saxon people from Saxony, and yet they didn't take on quite as many people, as many customs from there as what they think they did, you know. Not until later on into history and sea travel became much more common. You have a longer history with your Halloween, what's it called again? I've forgotten and I'm going to kill it. Kalan Gwav. Than what the English do with a lot of their Saxon history, which is a shame. You know, the Saxons seem to come over here, make homes, forget themselves, move on. Whereas you guys, I think because you were constantly moving back and forth, you kept things alive. And as the Breton people changed, adapted and got new customs, it moved over to Cornwall, which is how come you ended up with things like the Polish. I don't know if it is Polish or if the Polish also got it from somewhere midway between Britain and themselves, and it's spread out from there. But the candle lighting, that's nowhere else that I can find in the British Isles. So I'm guessing that's a trade thing. But yeah, that is Halloween right there. So it's a modern construct for the English, heavily British, and not always what you think it is or where you think it's from. And it has a lot of divination going on. And if you want to know who your husband is going to be, sort of, you've got a few choices. Just saying. Right, have fun. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And, well, I'll see you before next Halloween. But I'll have a look for some other festivals to look into. Hopefully not as head doing to find details on as this, and start doing more of these on the festivities bit, because I actually quite enjoyed doing this, but some of these were actually quite hard to find anything on. Right, have fun, don't do what I wouldn't do, and know your power. Bye. Silly thing.